Welcome to Following On talkSPORT 2, broadcasting across on SENZ and also the talkSPORT Cricket YouTube channel. I'm John Norman for the next 15 minutes or so, alongside Stuart Meaker, looking back at a 14-wicket day, an incredible day's play. It's just been how the series has been played. 235 New Zealand made after being winning the toss. Tom Latham deciding to bat first. Only two real innings of note. 71 to Will Young, taking 138 deliveries, and Daryl Mitchell, who was fighting the conditions even more than he was fighting the likes of Washington Sundar, who took 4 wickets, and Ravindra Jadeja 5. He was ninth man out for 82. It seemed a little shy of where New Zealand could have got to, but the ball was spinning throughout the innings. When India came out to bat, Sharma went early again, reprieved twice, but he couldn't make either of those chances count. He was caught in the slip cordon from the bowling of Matt Henry for 18. But then India feasted, really, or seized on the initiative given to them by the spinners. Ajaz Patel was wayward, Phillips expensive, and as we approached stumps on day one, it seemed, with India 78 for 1, like it was absolutely going to be their day. But what is symptomatic about this India side is that they lose wickets, and they lost 3 of them. Jaiswal on the reverse sweep, bowled behind his legs for 30. The very next ball, the night watch, Mohammad Siraj, LBW, and he lost a review. And in the penultimate over, actually no, it was the final over of the day, Virat Kohli pushing a ball to Matt Henry at mid-on, taking on the arm and losing. Incredible end to the day. Stuart Meaker, who's alongside me for the show. We can look back at New Zealand's innings, but first on, what are India doing? They've gone from a team that just cannot lose to a team that just doesn't know how to win.
Yeah, bizarre. Absolutely bizarre. Strange decision making. It's kind of gone in with this series, weirdly. Obviously, first test, they choose to bat first, get bowled out for 56 or 40, 50 odd.
46.
46, there you go. Thanks for helping me out. And then they sort of fight their way in the second test but lose, a couple of bad innings there, misfiring middle order, and then you follow into this, they get themselves into a position where a firing India, a world-class number 1 test team India, kick on and turn the screw and drive the team into the ground, and just out of nowhere they're finding ways of getting out and making poor decisions and exposing themselves and having to then play catch-up for the rest of the game.
Of all the dismissals, though, surely the most stunning of them, final over of the day. It may not have been the final over, actually, because it took a while for the review to go up. We might have got another one. Virat Kohli's run out. Talk me through that.
I can't particularly understand it. He might have had the thought of, well, look, if this is going to be the last over, let me be on strike for the next, for the start of the next day. Gill is in and he's set a little bit, and I want to take the pressure off of him for the start of the next day. Maybe I'm throwing things out there as to what he could have been thinking in order to take that single, but there is no ways that you hit that ball to that mid-on fielder. 9 times out of 10, you're turning around saying no, and the only time you're saying yes is when you want to get run out, and that's exactly what happened.
It's when you're on 9-9, isn't it? Or you're trying to get off the mark. That's the only time you take that single, and it's because your brain's a bit frazzled, right?
Yeah, that might be it. We saw Virat Kohli playing games with himself half the time on the pitch, because I think he must have just been a bit bored or dehydrated. It's been that sort of day. It's been so hot. But that is the decision of someone who's spent all day in the field and gotten towards the end, a bit frazzled by the night watchman getting out. He, as Jared pointed out, he probably wanted another night watchman, and he's just made a very bad call.
What about the conditions? Because if there's one takeaway from today, it's Daryl Mitchell, the 1,000-yard stare. He looked shell-shocked. He looked like it was at the end of one of those, films from the 80s, in Vietnam, where the war-torn heroes had enough and seen too much. The
Thin Red Line, wasn't it?
Yeah, he looked so... I've never seen a man sweat quite as much as Daryl Mitchell did today. He was absolutely drenched. It was a flow of water that wasn't just coming from his face. It was coming from his cap. When he bent over, it was just like a stream. It was ridiculous, and he was in real trouble. He was talking to himself. He was willing himself on. Every 2 or 3 overs, he'd be taking on fluids. It was hot, right? Washington Sundar was off the field for a portion of the game. It was seriously hot. So to end up with a top score of 82 at the end of all that, I mean, credit to the bloke. He performed. It's probably one of the most impressive innings I've seen from him when you consider the conditions he had to display.
Yeah, I mean, look, like we said, there certainly was one point where we thought he might actually have to go off.
It was, wasn't there? It was a couple of times.
Bent over double.
Yeah, I think actually, if the Indian team had been less sympathetic, and they themselves are struggling, right, I wouldn't be surprised. Say it was 1-1, right, and this was the deciding test. I think we can imagine opponents who would have been pressing the umpire to maybe force that decision,
just for his own safety. Yeah, I mean,
for the game situation. Maybe. But that didn't happen today.
No, but look, credit to him. You know, we thought that he was going to be struggling. I think they went off at tea time, didn't he? And he was absolutely nowhere. I remember looking at him, and he was, like you say, speaking to himself. Bent over double, hands on knees, just in between almost every single ball. And then he came back out after tea, and he looked a bit fresh. He had a bit of time to rest, whether he chucked his head under a cold shower, and he suddenly looked a little bit more alive, whether he'd maybe gotten some more fluids or a bit of food, etc., etc. And then obviously New Zealand ended up losing a fair few wickets, and he took the game to India, and he played a hell of a good knock. And you know what? Take nothing away from Will Young. I thought he played brilliantly as well. You know, he did much the same. He didn't look as much like he was dying as as Conway did. Sorry, not Conway, Mitchell. And you know, he was strong in defence. He played his shots when he needed to. He took the game to Ashwin a couple of times. And you know, I thought it was a bit unfortunate that he didn't kick on and get his first 100 either.
What about India then? You know, they've been in positions in this Test match. Look, they got bowled out for 46 in the first match. The fact that they even got themselves into a position where they were favourites to win that Test with that strong second innings showing, 150 for Sarfraz Khan, it says a lot about them. But in the second Test match, again, conditions were there for them, and yet it's almost like they just seem to be lacking in confidence. Even when they're kind of ahead of the game, you almost feel, and we didn't feel, we felt that this was going to be India's day. We did not see 3 wickets to 6 runs with Ajaz Patel and Glenn Phillips bowling in the way that they were, because they were loose and there were some ordinary dismissals. But what is it about India? And what is it about teams? You've played for Surrey teams when I imagine the feeling is very positive, and you've probably played for Surrey teams when the opposite is true. How quickly can things change?
Quickly is the answer, and that's why everyone's, you know, when you're a team and you're playing together, everyone's got to be very conscious of making sure that when you are winning, whatever the habits are that you've created, you maintain all the way through. All the sort of off-field work, all the training, all the doing the right things, etc., etc. Because sometimes, if you don't, and you can carry on winning for a little while, but then out of nowhere you might lose a series, and that loss of a series can suddenly change the whole entire complexion of your team and the questions that are asked. I mean, if they end up losing this series 3-0, India, what kind of questions do you reckon are going to get asked, John, of Rohit Sharma, of Virat Kohli, of that middle order batting lineup? There could end up being a few players that don't end up carrying on, after this Test series if they're not too careful. So you've got to be very careful of making sure that you're always maintaining it. But take also nothing away from New Zealand. They played bloody well in the first 2 Tests, you know, and they deserve this victory that they've got.
Yeah, absolutely. They absolutely deserve to be 2-0 up. They've played the better cricket throughout, consistently, especially with the bat. And again, this is where the problems lie for India, it seems, with this much vaunted Indian batting lineup. You know, you look through them and there's some big names in there, but once again, Sharma, he was dropped twice. And he didn't make it count. He was out for 18. And this is a pitch or a day which has seen 2 batters dismissed from pace. Devon Conway and Akashdeep and Mohammad Siraj bowled well with the new ball. And Sharma's gone again early. I'd say if you're an Indian fan, you'd be very concerned about the form of your skipper.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, the way that he played that shot, I do think that ball did bounce on him a little bit more than he was probably expecting. As I said, at the time, it just seemed like one of those balls that you rise onto the back foot and you'd sort of dot it down to mid-wicket square leg for a dot ball. That one did just bounce on him, and then just at the last second, it just swung and sort of held its line, which caught the edge of his bat. But when you're having a bad run of form, those things can happen, and then it sort of exacerbates everything for you. It's in other innings where things and conditions have been in his favour, and look at this pitch. There's as we say, there's always a ball in it. In other conditions, why is he not scoring the runs that he needs to stop people asking those questions? Because we can all see that this is a bit of a tricky pitch. You're never really in, and these are the times where you go, okay, look, I got a bit of a ball that did some stuff here and there, but in the other conditions, why is he not going on and scoring some big runs?
Let's look ahead to day 2 and the rest of the Test match. 235 didn't seem enough, but, and we said this quite early, it's still a score, right? They're not being bowled out for 140, 160. How many do you think India need to get to be back ahead of the game?
I mean, we spoke again at the start of the day about 270, 280 being a par score. I think this pitch is drying up quite quickly because of the conditions and because of the heat. I think if they get a good 60, 70 lead, if they can get up to 300, they're well ahead of the game. I know New Zealand have batted first. India will have the rub of the green of batting, last on this if it goes that far, or if India can don't quite get the amount of runs that they need to. But yeah, I think 60, 70 runs, get themselves up to 300 if they can from here. Obviously, they've lost Kohli and I suppose a night watchman, but that will come from sensible batting. That's all that it'll take. There was nothing in that New Zealand attack that looked super threatening to them at the time.
Hey, we haven't seen the leg spinner yet.
Well, that's also very true.
We've just had the most madcap end to the day, and we didn't even see Ish Sodhi bowl. I mean, can you imagine?
Yeah, and I suppose we were all calling for Ajaz to stop bowling. So we never know what's going to happen in this game, and we know that. But yeah, I mean, I didn't feel as threatened as I did when India were bowling on that wicket. If I were an Indian batter, if I apply myself and I don't make any rash decisions like short, quick run-outs or reverse sweeps when stage of the game wasn't right, I think I could score some good runs in there.
They do bat deep, don't they? Washington Sundar, who actually came in at 5 in second innings of the second Test, down to bat now because of Mohammad Siraj at 10. Which is a little crazy. Shubman Gill and Rishabh Pant, the 2 batters that were coming out at the start of day 2. Big thanks to Stuart Meaker for joining us here. We're going to be joined by another former fast bowler over days 2 and 3, the former New Zealand Wellingtonian. So we'll have a lot to talk to Daniel McCarty about. And Jeremy Coney, no doubt. Ian O'Brien is going to be joining us for the next couple of days here live and exclusive on talkSPORT 2. We've got lots of content to come. It's going to be following us. But for now, thanks for watching or listening to Following On talkSPORT 2.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.